Welcome to Secrets to Depos 201. This is Brooke Wagner, and we're going to talk about colloquy. Colloquy is another component of the proceedings. It makes up the meat of the sandwich. And because colloquy is a complex subject, please go ahead and watch this video at least 2 times before you start playing around with how you want to write the different speaker identifications and making defines in your dictionary. So as we've seen this page before, transcripts are more than just the Q&A concept. You have headings, colloquy, parentheticals, your witness sworn-in statement, of course your Q&A. So there's lots of different parts that make up a transcript. We're going to talk specifically right now about colloquy. So anytime someone is speaking outside of the typical Q&A, the question and answer, they're going to be set off with their name, all in caps, and with the formatting to put them at the precise spot in the transcript every time. You're going to have the names of your attorneys. For everyone else, it's going to be the reporter, the videographer, the interpreter, the court, and all of those can be found in the Uniform Format Manual. The default ending punctuation for colloquy is to have a period. If someone says a question, try to hit the question mark, but for the most part, it's just that's an editing thing afterwards, but expect the default to be that it's going to end in a period. Typically, when you are going to write out an attorney's name, Mr. or Ms., and then just their last name is fine. If their last name is hyphenated, do go ahead and try to put both those parts of the name. If someone speaks and maybe it's 2 women and the daughter and the mother are present and they both have the same last name, you can also put their first name. So Miss Barbara Smith, and then if the other one speaks, maybe it's Miss Nancy Smith. So here we have a picture of a typical deposition. Sorry that the picture came out fuzzy. Now, the one difference is that the reporter usually doesn't sit to the side of the table parallel like this. Typically, you would swing around and your machine, you would be facing the table instead of being right to the side of the table. But this is how a typical deposition looks when it's just being taken by a reporter. And when I set up and ask people to sit, I would ask for my taking attorney, the one who's going to be asking most of the questions, who called the deposition, to sit to the first chair on the left. I'm then going to ask the witness to sit to the first chair on my right, so this would be the witness. This would be one of the witness's attorneys, and let's say that's another attorney, and this can be, again, another attorney. So your taking attorney, who's going to ask most of the questions, is set up directly across from your witness. So anything that this attorney asks this witness, they're going to, and the witness gives back an answer, they're going to do in Q&A format, as we discussed in a previous video. Anything that this attorney says to anyone else at the table, so maybe this gentleman, or to this attorney, or to that attorney, is going to be in colloquy. Anything that this witness says to her attorney or to anyone else at the table is going to be in colloquy. And again, if things are directed back to the attorney asking the majority of the questions, it's going to be back in question-answer format. Now, if this attorney finishes, says, I pass the witness, And now the witness's attorney starts asking questions. Well, they are now in Q&A format, back and forth. And now maybe this attorney says something, the witness says something to respond. Those would be in colloquy to each other. And then this attorney starts asking questions again to the witness, which puts them back into Q&A format. So anything outside of a specific one-on-one Q&A format is going to be in colloquy. If you as the reporter ask someone to speak up, ask them to slow down, ask them to spell something on the record, if there's a videographer present and they speak on the record, so certain things the interpreter says, those are all also in colloquy. So here are 4 of the most basic speaker identifications in colloquy that you're going to have in a deposition. So certain things that the witness is going to say, if it falls outside of the direct Q&A format, is going to be the witness in colloquy. The way I write that is my answer bank with a W. If you want to define that using Eclipse, do Control-G, F2, and then write the witness, all capped with a colon. You may have to play with it to see if you need to add another space or not. So write, W with the answer bank, and then write a few more words to see if your spacing came up correctly. All colloquy is going to be all capped with a colon, and 2 spaces have to follow it. If you're ever in doubt of the 2 spaces, then delete all the spaces and count out 2 with the space bar to make sure that you got it in the right spot. So one of the others is the reporter. To write the reporter, I actually do all the letters except for D and Z all at the same time. So all the consonants, all the vowels, that's how I come up with the reporter. The videographer, I do the answer bank with initial V. That's my videographer. The interpreter, I do the question and answer bank with I in between, and that comes up the interpreter for me. And again, you may have to define those for yourself so that it comes up that way. I leave the just question and answer bank. I've made that defined as the court. I would really recommend you leave that one alone. You actually leave it in your dictionary even if you do depositions. You don't think you're going to do court. It's just going to save you later on. You just don't know. You may end up in court. So, but to do court, I do the question and answer bank. A really easy concept for writing colloquy for different attorneys that you may have. If you learned no other way to do it, or if you were in a room with 30 attorneys and each time before they did an examination they gave their name so that you didn't necessarily have to remember who they were. So if you have to have one trick and one trick only, I would double write something about their name. So in this deposition, let's pretend that we had Mr. Johnson, Miss Smith, and Mr. Lee as the 3 attorneys. You could write John, Smith, Lee. And then you could go back, and for that job only, you could define that, and again, this is how you do it in Eclipse, that John is going to be colloquy for Mr. Johnson, Smith is going to be colloquy for Miss Smith, and Lee is, oh, I'm sorry, I messed up on the slide, but anyway, it's supposed to be Mr. Lee. I like this practice to have in a pinch. I like it when I have too many attorneys than my typical number of speaker IDs allows for. I don't like this system for a everyday usage because when they start going into colloquy, typically their attorneys are argumentative and people are speaking over each other, you're trying to write 30% faster than what you were writing during Q&A, and there's so much to take. You don't need to add in double strokes for everyone's name. So plus trying to remember, okay, who is that person? So this is nice to have in your back pocket as a concept, but I would really like to show you a better way to always write your colloquy, always have it available. And before we leave the concept of, double write something like the John or Lee for someone's name, if you didn't know someone's name, they came into the deposition late and you didn't catch it yet, but you knew that they wore a pink shirt or a blue shirt or a brown tie, then you could go ahead and identify them, and you could write pink every time they spoke or when they came and left the room, or blue for the blue shirt. So this just gives you another alternative. If you don't know a name yet, pick something maybe identifying, but that isn't offensive if they happen to see your screen, that you can then define a little later. Alright, so this is another reason why I don't necessarily love using some type of physical identifier when thinking about the different speakers at your table. It's very easy to perhaps write a description based on a person's race, or person's lack of hair, or the person's physical roundness or lack thereof. So, and while we like to think, oh, but I'm writing in steno and it's a language no one else understands, a lot of people can figure out steno pretty quick, and depending on if they can see your screen, it can be very offensive. So there have actually been a few male attorneys that really didn't like being called bald. So you just using the double word description can have a problem to it. So just be very, very aware of what words you pick if you choose to use this method as your go-to. Alright, so this is how I would encourage you to write colloquy. You can go into in Eclipse, you can go into your master speaker list or your speaker list, and you can create the identifier for your attorney 1, attorney 2, attorney 3, attorney 4. I recommend that you have at least 4 speaker IDs for attorneys. You can do it by using the steno of SNU and I guess SNI, and then Jew and Jai. And then you can go in and define those using your Control G, F2, and then writing attorney 1, going all the way through. If you have at least 4 speaker IDs, that's going to cover you for at least, 95% of your jobs. So, and that'll give you plenty to practice. But if you can tell what we did, we took the top bank of your left hand with the vowels, AO, and then we did the bottom, we did the same bank, SN, with the I, and then we did the bottom bank with AO, and then the bottom bank with EU. If this doesn't quite work for you, the concept that we're trying to use the top bank then the lower bank with connection with the vowels, do a couple of different ways, because you want your right hand open, because we're going to do some extensions using other letters, so you don't really want to get into blocking yourself from being able to do that. But I think with the theory that y'all are learning in school right now, this is probably conflict free. So if you give it a try after you've watched the video a couple of times, hopefully it'll be conflict free. This is another room for a typical setup for a deposition. The court reporter is going to sit at the head or the end of the table in this chair. I'm going to ask for the taking attorney to sit to the chair to my left, and I'm going to label them with my speaker ID as attorney 1. I'm going to ask the witness to sit directly across from the taking attorney, attorney 1, and sit to the first chair to my right. I'm going to ask the witness's attorney, which in colloquy will be attorney 2, to sit to that chair to the right. And if there's a third attorney, especially if this attorney is in connection with attorney 1, then I'm going to ask them to sit to the furthest chair to the left. If this attorney is not on the same side as attorney 1, then I might encourage that attorney to move his chair and he can sit at the other end of the table, just to give this person a little more room. Now, because it's really common during a deposition to only have 2 attorneys, that's why I have attorney 1 and attorney 2. When I created the speaker IDs and I did SNAO, well, the AO is on the left side of my steno machine, and I'm visual, so that helps me remember that belongs to attorney 1, who I have on my left. Attorney 2, the way that I struck their speaker ID is SNI. Well, the EU or the I is on the right side of my steno machine, and again, that coordinates with the person sitting to the right. If you're not visual at all, then you can create them however you want to, but that's what helps me be able to line people up, is what side of the table they're on. To build on that idea of, now you've got your general speaker IDs figured out. So your attorney 1, you did as SNAO. If you wanted to create a brief so that you're hitting the speaker ID with objection form, even though they do say I object or object form, they do variations on the phrase. Really, even if you're doing roll time, they go so quickly when they object. If you at least had one stroke to get that's preferable to maybe dropping part of the question, hesitating, trying to pick it all back up. So I don't get wrapped around the axle if maybe they said, I object in form. For the job, I write it like that, and then I correct it when I edit. When I edit, it's verbatim, but maybe when I wrote it, if I needed a quick fix to throw something down, this is a nice brief. So as you can tell, for the attorney 1, everything is SNAO, or SNU. Then we tag on with the right hand the part that gives the objection the difference. So form, I use RM. Non-responsive, on the right hand I do NS. Asked and answered, DZ. Leading, the asterisk L. Argumentative, asterisk G. And mischaracterizes the evidence is asterisk M. This is going to be the majority of what your objections sound like. They really are that quick. They do need the colon between objection and form. And then if you're in Eclipse, this is how you go ahead and make those defines for that one stroke so that everything comes up in just one hit. It's a big time saver. So once you do it for attorney 1 and you feel comfortable and you found that everything is compatible and doesn't have a conflict, well, then you can go through for your stroke for attorney 2 and then attorney 3 and attorney 4, and you can add in those 6 objections so that they become more comfortable. And as we discussed with the Q&A, it's a great thing to sit in front of the television and pretend that the speakers, you've given them speaker IDs and colloquy, and you're just going to take the time to hit the different colloquy symbols when they speak, And if you're fast enough, if you're in your 140s, 160s, or above, go ahead and try to write part of the program. But it's more important to get very comfortable with how you're stroking the colloquy and that you're really stroking it well so that it breaks down hesitation.